All right. So for the final section of this lecture, I want to talk about the impact of Islam. I mean, we saw in the previous part of this lecture the massive spread of Islam. We saw that it becomes a, multi-regional, multi-continental religion in a very, very short period of time. It spreads to Europe, Africa, Asia, parts of Southeast Asia, all around the Indian Ocean. So even after the fall of the Caliphate, the Islamic religion is still impacting the lives of tens and tens of millions of people. So what exactly is that impact that we need to know? Well, socially, under the Quran and under Sharia law, there is some examples of countering the spread of patriarchy. The Quran teaches that both men and women are religiously equal under Allah, if not socially equal. Also, the teachings of Sharia, which are built on the way that Muhammad lived his own life, um, give women certain rights. And these continue under the early caliphs. Women are given the right to divorce, they are given the right to inherit property, they're given the right to own their own property. Female infanticide, the killing of young daughters in order to make way for sons is outlawed under the early caliphate. And early on, it seems as if women within the caliphate are going to experience a level of freedom and a level of involvement that really doesn't exist for them anywhere else. Unfortunately, as the caliphate flourishes, as it gets more successful, as it expands and becomes a truly massive empire and it begins incorporating these other ethnicities begin to push back against some of these more egalitarian ideals, right? Under the Umayyads, which are a very militaristic regime, obviously favoritism is going to be shown towards men because they can, they are the ones that are going out fighting wars, winning battles, bringing converts into the caliphate. And under the Umayyads, you begin to see the process of limiting women's access to religion and to public life. Women begin to, be denied access to certain roles and certain jobs. Even after the fall of the Umayyads, under the Abbasids, which culturally were very enlightened and very progressive and very forward thinking, the influence of Persian traditions that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, begin to again, eat away at women's role in society. Under the Abbasids, women become secluded in their homes. If they want to make an appearance in, kind of in public, they must be in the presence of a man, only a member of their family. The Persian tradition of female veils becomes tied in with the religion, head to toe cover, things like the burqa. Um, Women begin to be relegated to separate prayer rooms and separate prayer times where they, you know, can't be present in the mosque with men at the same time. And again, as is the case with, most of these belief systems, patriarchy begins to rear its ugly head again, and the belief system begins to adapt to cater to it. Um, as time goes by, members of the Islamic community begin to interpret the Quran and interpret Sharia to fit a more male dominated power structure. You have very powerful religious leaders known as imams, which begin issuing edicts declaring, women's equality to be unnatural. citing the fact that, Muhammad, a man, was chosen, and therefore men, should, are the true possessors of God's message, et cetera, et cetera. Under the Abbasids, you also see the reemergence of polygamy, which is, again, the marrying of multiple wives. It is also encouraged in Persian and Turkish traditions, with the idea of the harem, which is essentially a secluded area within a Muslim household where the women are basically, not locked in, but that is essentially their space, where they're not to be seen by the public. They're not to, leave the house. This is the area where the children are raised and nursed and fed. The idea of, male heirs and their worship begins to reemerge as well. So the early years of Islam offer, quite a bit of hope in terms of the relationship between men and women. But again, once the religion and the empire begin having some success and they begin incorporating other ethnic groups, those long-standing patriarchal traditions in those ethnic groups begin to assert themselves within Islam as well, right? So here you have some of the traditional garb for Muslim women. As you can see, it is, very, it's very conservative, and it is, it plays into this idea that women should not expose themselves in public life, that they should not be, really evident in public. Now, here's the thing: is by no means is this a forced thing. This becomes kind of ingrained as part of the social expectation of Islam. And many Muslim women wear this by choice because they feel strongly that, they should not, expose themselves to people outside of their household. On the left, you have a painting of a Islamic harem. This is again this idea of kind of a secluded place within a Muslim household where the women are kept from outside life. They're kept from exposure to other men and to, the general public. Now, one of the other really important impacts of the spread of Islam is cultural. And this is what we call the golden age of Islam. And the golden age of Islam begins under the Abbasid dynasty. And thanks to the Abbasid dynasty, the Islamic world sees a cultural and an economic explosion. The Abbasids and the Muslim world in general begins to dominate the major trade routes in Eurasia. This wealth that comes from that is able to be reinvested within the caliphate. And there is a massive explosion in science, in art. The Abbasids begin building free public libraries and madrasas in all of their major cities. They build a massive university in Baghdad known as the House of Wisdom, where essentially the smart, the best of the best are brought from around the empire to study, to debate, to exchange ideas. The Abbasids purchased thousands of Greco-Roman texts that they then translate into Arabic. Muslim scholars then begin to read and comment on and expand upon those established sciences. Guys like Aristotle, like Plato. Also, during this time period, you see the spread of what we call Arabic numerals throughout not only the Caliphate, but into the Mediterranean world. And the Arabic numerals are just simply the number system that we currently use. Now, we call them Arabic numerals because it was Arabs who introduced them into Europe, and that cultural legacy got passed down to the Americas. However, Arabic numerals actually originate in India. And thanks to the spread of the Caliphate and Islam into northern India, that method of numerical record keeping becomes part of Islamic tradition and therefore part of European tradition and therefore part of American tradition, right? Um, like we said, Muslims begin to dominate trade pretty much in all of Eurasia. The Islamic attitude towards trade and merchants encourages merchants to convert to Islam. Again, for all of the reasons that we already said. Innovations in finance give Muslim merchants advantages along the major trade routes. This creates kind of diasporic Muslim communities all over Africa, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, India, because many of these people in these communities are doing business mainly with other Muslims. And in order to get the advantages that Muslim merchants and traders have, I mean, they have to convert. And so you see a lot of Muslim merchants who move to these areas and marry into the population. You also see, people who, live locally in these areas who willingly convert because they want to be able to do business with these Muslim merchants that are moving along the trade routes. The Abbasid dynasty also, enforces control over these trade routes politically as well. There's a major battle in 751 between the Abbasid Caliphate and the Tang dynasty in China, who are expanding west into Central Asia, um, basically trying to counter the influence of the Caliphate. So when the Abbasids win this battle, it really kind of halts Chinese expansion out to the west, and it secures Islam a place along the Silk Road, meaning that Muslim merchants will essentially have safe passage in and out of Central Asia and into China as well. Um, Also, because of the size of the empire, um, Muslims basically control, a lot of important bodies of water. They control the Red Sea, they control the Persian Gulf, the coastline of East and North Africa, which gives them a lot of influence in the Indian Ocean, gives them a lot of influence in the Mediterranean. It also ensures that, Muslims have access to basically every type of trade good. So there is no, having to go through middlemen to get spice or gold or ivory or perfume. Silk, they still have to go through the Chinese because, the Chinese basically control silk for like ever. But Muslims still have access to it. They can still make money off of it. Also, because of this dominance of trade routes, the Islamic community sees a lot of diffusion of important technologies. Gunpowder is brought from China. The printing press is brought over from China. Right? The Muslim astrolabe, sees itself diffuse out into the Indian Ocean and to the rest of the world. The magnetic compass from China comes into use in the Islamic world thanks to, again, trade with China. So there's quite a bit of cultural progress that we owe to this kind of golden age of Islam. Um, On the right there, you see an example of an Islamic astrolabe. This was a device that was used for navigation by measuring the position of specific stars each night, which then gave people the ability to travel east to west more accurately. On the left here, there's a list. This is actually in your textbook as well of some of the most important Muslim scholars from this era, as well as down on the right, you have a link to some of the more famous Muslim authors from this golden age as